Okay, I'm going to wrap up 2024 with a concept video. So I'm going to talk about inflammation, something that's come on my radar as a consultant with Precision Microbes over the last number of years, particularly from the research we've been doing across species of animals, reading the human research as well, looking at the role of inflammation in the gut, and by using biological products, how we can improve that and the knock-on positive benefits to overall health. But let's go back in time and look at medicine and the evolution of medicine. In both most evolution or most innovation occurs on the human side, and it's transferred to animal health. So when we look at the real time points in medicine over the last 200 years, hygiene, the simple thing of hygiene, is actually, there's a guy called Ignaz Semmelweis in the early 1800s. He identified that if physicians washed their hands during birthing, that they would reduce mortality at that time. He was scorned for what he suggested, but later it proved that hygiene was a key part of reducing infection pressure. Epidemiology, John Snow, famous for a cholera outbreak in the 1800s in London, identified a water pump as a source of disease, looking at the spread. And again, we've taken epidemiology and modern medicine and looking at patterns of disease to paint a picture on how we control particularly infectious disease. We've got vaccinations, which again were revolutionary. Edward Jenner looked at milkmaids who were exposed to cowpox and they weren't getting smallpox. He later used cowpox as a vaccination. That was the first vaccine to eliminate smallpox. What's really interesting is the word vac actually comes from the word cow. So cows have a big role. I'm a big cow fan in vaccines. Then you've Louis Pasteur, who further developed vaccines. We've sanitation. And then we look at Alexander Fleming, a huge leap forward with discovery of antibiotics, penicillin, which was an accidental fungal growth that he saw on his plates and cultures. And he later isolated penicillin, which was the first antibiotic. And we've seen antibiotics again revolutionize modern health, human health. All this is also transferred to animal health. What's interesting is over the last number of hundred years, we've seen infectious disease over time going down, a lot because of the advancements in certainly in developed countries in modern medicine. People will hear me talk about the seesaw, that when we look at infectious disease, we're always trying to balance immunity and infection pressure. We're trying to drive up immunity and drive down infection pressure. A lot of these principles are based on that. But if we look and go forward and we see, and this is something I love reading human papers and animal health papers, looking at the rise of chronic disease. And this takes me back to inflammation. So when we think about our immune systems, they're amazing, both animals and humans. They're designed to look at and identify pathogens, create a response, create a memory. Inflammation is a natural process. If I hit my hand with a hammer, there's a natural inflammatory response, an acute response, which is in the short term. But what we see now with inflammation is it's become more chronic. And that's a real problem, especially when we go into the gut, and I'll talk about that. But when we think about inflammation and chronic disease, we need to is the next phase of medicine looking at chronic disease and how we can identify that. Now, when you look at the causal factors for the rise of chronic disease and inflammation, particularly in humans, changing of diet, stress is a big one. These all affect the gut as well. So the environment, chemicals that we might be using in the environment are leading to issues with inflammation. Diet and stress are probably the two big ones that I identify. And it's no different in our pets, our horses, or even our farm animals when we look at how we manage them. A number of years ago, I got quite interested in the whole area of animal behavior and from a production and performance point of view. And this idea of biological behavior and behavior optimization. So I started with cows. Well, if we understand what the cow wants and we put her in the middle of the system and build a system around her, around nutrition, her habits, her lying times, she's actually going to be more productive and profitable and stay in the system longer. Again, if we look at this with calves, or if we look at any animal, if we look at humans, it's very simple. We need to sleep more, move, exercise, healthy diet, reduce stress. They're the kind of fundamentals, hydration. So if we know through biological evolution as well what animals need, be it production or performance animals, if we can get more of it, we can certainly reduce stress. So it's been a really key concept for me that I suppose fit nicely with the work I'm doing with Precision Microbes. Again, from the research work that I've been doing, looking at targeting gut health with unique pro and postbiotic liquids, some of the benefits we're seeing in cow trials and other species have been really phenomenal. And again, it links in, if we're reducing gut inflammation, what are the knock-on positive benefits we'll see in farm animals, horses, and other species? So when we think about the gut, why is the gut so important to the inflammation story? Well, 70% of the immune system is in the gut. And there's a reason 70% plus is in the gut, because if you think about the digestive system in any animal or human, it's a huge surface area. Digest is going in, the immune system is focused there to, I suppose, keep an eye on things. And most times, actually, the microorganisms in the gut microbiome, are telling and communicating with the immune system to take it easy, everything's under control. But when we get a change in diversity, a disruption to the gut microbes and the gut health in general, it has a very knock-on effect in increasing inflammation in the gut. This overactivation of the immune system localized in the gut has all sorts of side effects on brain health, behavior, heart health, all sorts of other things. And in production systems as well, where we look at fertility and performance, they can have a real knock-on effect. So that's what we've seen, and this is what's fascinated me about this project, is if we can reduce gut inflammation, we see all these positive benefits. Now, when we look at the evolution of medicine, for me, starting off in this project, because we're working with biological products, natural products, it's sort of been, it's seen as alternative, but very much this is going to become mainstream because we've seen the advancements in infectious disease and we've seen the rise of chronic disease. We've got to look at how we manage animals, biology, behavior, systems, building systems around it, again, with in mind that the person working with them is the most important person, and understand and educate them around it. But then if we look at optimizing gut health, there's a real role for biological products, and I'm absolutely convinced of that. No one will be surprised to hear me say that. But why this is getting really interesting is because of course, the research work we're seeing, the positive benefits. And there's loads and loads of papers. I like reading papers across species to look at different things. These are some of the calf papers I was just reading this morning around another trial that we're doing. But again, if we look at metabolomics, we now understand how biology works. We understand how it works in the digestive tract. We know the interconnected nature of the gut and other body systems. We know the impacts of stress and diet on our bodies and our animals, that there's a real role for biological products as part of the next evolution, I think, in the medicine story. And I think it's a really interesting space. But we've got to think about inflammation, a natural process, but excess low-grade inflammation, driven a lot of times by diet, stress, and the environment, are having on human and animal health. It's a really interesting area. It's why it's piqued my interest. Last message of the year.